Now let's go to Matthew chapter 13, verse 3. Matthew chapter 13 and verse 3. I'm going to read all the way to verse 7. So this is basically a parable about the seed and the sower, right? And what we're going to see is that you cannot prepare your own heart. What we don't understand is that you cannot prepare your own heart. You cannot prepare your own heart. It doesn't matter how the seed is sown. You take the earth, you take the seed. It doesn't matter how the seed is sown. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter who you are. That earth, that soil, the Most High has to prepare that land for you. No matter how much you go and till it, the Most High has to prepare that heart for that person. So when you come and sow that seed, for it to increase and bring forth fruits. It is grace that prepares that heart, grace that prepares that land. Not all these things that you're doing. You cannot spiritually wake up a person. That is the metaphysical resurrection that takes place in each of us at different times in our lives. You didn't tell yourself, okay, when you're 25 years old, you're going to be spiritually awakened. None of us can do that. That's grace. Right? So it says, and he spake many things unto them in parables. Behold, a sower went forth to sow, and when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them up. Some fell upon stony places, where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up, because they had no deepness of earth. And when the sun was up, they scorched. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them. So what? The problem is not with the seed. The problem is with the soil that it's sown into. Nothing is wrong with Torah. Torah is that seed. The law is that seed that you sow. Nothing is wrong with that seed. It is the ground, it is the heart that you're sowing it into. Heart of unbelief, heart of stone. How are you going to farm on stones? How are you going to farm among tears? Huh? You have to get rid of those wild trees first. They're going to be blocking the sunshine that you need for your plant to grow and produce fruit. So the Most High has to remove that veil, that spirit of unbelief. And most of the times he does it through an experience. Oh, you don't believe in God, this, that. Boom, something happened to you. The first place you went to, the book of Job. Most of us, the first place or the first thing that we know about is Job's experience. That's not a coincidence. Right? Verse 8, it says, but other fell into good ground and brought forth fruit, some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. You see, when grace prepares that ground, you're only going to increase. Not you preparing your own heart. Oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. No, it doesn't work like that. Grace does that. Right? Now let's go to the book of 2 Esdras, chapter 3 and verse 7. And unto him thou gavest commandment to love thy way, which he transgressed, and immediately thou appointest death in him and in his generations, of whom came nations, tribes, people, and kindreds out of number. And you see, it's funny. It says because of Adam's transgression. So because of one man's body, right? Because of one man's body, all his descendants go through this process. But it's funny when it comes to forgiveness, one person cannot do that. I mean, when Abraham did what he did, the faith wasn't only accounted to him, but his children too, right? Children of the promise. We're going to get into that later. So we're seeing that because of disobedience, Adam and his descendants were cursed, were subject to death, right? Verse 8, and every people walked after their own will and did wonderful things before thee and despised thy commandments. And again, in process of time, thou broughtest the flood upon those that dwell in the world and destroyest them. And it came to pass in every of them that as death was to Adam, so was the flood unto these. Nevertheless, one of them thou leftest, namely Noah, with his household, of whom came all righteous men. So through one man again comes all righteous men. Now when they lived so wickedly before thee, thou didst choose thee a man from among them, whose name was Abraham. Him thou lovest, and unto him only thou showest thy will. Thy will, the will of the Most High, was shown to Abraham. Abraham showed it unto Isaac. Isaac showed it unto Jacob, right? Now, when it comes down to this, a lot of us don't really understand. When it comes down to what the Most High made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was his will. This is why when we pray, depends on how some of us pray, we pray to the God of who? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and we remind him about what? The covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You don't go back to say the covenant he made with the children of Israel when he left Egypt. You don't use that when you pray, because what? You're making reference to the promise, not the covenant of the law that he made with them, as how they should have their lives guided by the law, which they did not keep. You go back to the promise. You go back to faith. This is why you reference the promise or the covenant made with the God of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not with, what's his name, Kohath, not with those wicked people that came out of Egypt. Not that covenant. It's a reason for that. Verse 15 says, and madest an everlasting covenant with him, promise him that thou wouldest never forsake his seed. Promise. So what's going to happen now? We're going to talk about. So now we're going to have to look at the difference between a promise and a covenant. What is the difference between a covenant and a promise? A covenant is an agreement between two or more parties where they agree to do or not to do something. So that means both parties, Yahweh and the children of Israel, they have obligations, they have responsibilities, both sides. So, for example, if you keep the commandments, if you do these things, I will. If you guys do this, this is your obligations. This is what you have to do. Keep the commandments, whatever. No, my part of the bargain is that I'm going to give you all the increase. I'm going to make you a whole nation. I'm going to make you above the people. You see what I'm saying? So the two parties are involved in the covenant. Now the promise is an assurance that one will do something or something will happen. This involves only one party. So if I say, I promise I'm going to take you out this weekend, because it's a promise, it doesn't depend on whether you behave good or you behave bad. So even if you did the worst thing, because it was a promise, I had assured you that I would take you out. So when weekend comes, I have to take you out. I have to take you out. It's only dependent on me, not how you behave. Now, if I said to you, if you behave your, if you behave yourself properly according to these standards, I will take you out this weekend. And you said, okay, guess what? We just made a covenant because you're not obliged to behave in this particular way. And then I'm going to have to do my part of the bargain. That's a covenant, right? For example, the Most High made a promise to Abraham, and after the promise, no, the circumcising of the flesh is a covenant towards the promise that was just made. But the covenant that's of circumcision, it cannot make void the promise. That's a covenant between Abraham and his seed with the Most High. That's a covenant. But what the Most High had promised him had nothing to do with the covenant. Two different things. So, in other words, me taking this person out on the weekend and it's not dependent on something that he or she has to do, that that thing is called grace because it only involves one party. That's what grace is. If I say to you, if you get an A on your exams, I'm going to buy you such and such. That's a covenant. So we have to understand that a promise is grace. A covenant is work, is something that you have to do to get a reward, right? So now we can talk about the wicked heart. Let's jump down to verse 19, 2nd Esdras chapter 3 and verse 19. And the glory went through four gates of fire, and of earthquake, and of wind, and of cold, that thou mightest give the law unto the seed of Jacob, and diligence unto the generation of Israel. So we see that the Most High gave the laws to the seed of Jacob, right? Verse 20. And yet tookest thou not away from them a wicked heart, that thy law might bring forth fruit. So, in other words, he didn't remove the impulses of the wicked heart, but he allowed the laws to guide them. You still have that wicked heart. You still have Torah, and it should guide you, but the wicked heart is still there, right? Verse 21, it says, for the first Adam bearing a wicked heart transgressed and was overcome, he was defeated. And so be all that and so be all they that are born of him. Verse 22 says, thus, remember, Adam was defeated. Thus, infirmity was made permanent, and the law also in the heart of the people with the malignity of the root, so that the good departed away, Torah, and the evil abode still. So, guess what happened? The seed of Torah was sown, but guess what? The root of evil was also there. So you have the two of them. So now you understand why Paul talks about this war, this internal light and darkness, good and evil, whatever you call it. Torah was that good seed that was sown, but without grace, guess what? You cannot bring forth all the fruits of Torah. You cannot bring forth the fruits of the Spirit. So Torah was sown, but the seed of the evil root was also there, both of them battling with each other. Torah said, don't do this, but the evil seed of the evil root is there that's saying the opposite. So there's a battle in between. There's a battle between the two inside of each of us. Which side is going to be predominant? Check out the unbelief. Look at the fruits that they produce, right?